Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into something pretty significant in European security.
Yeah, this new mutual assistance treaty between France and Poland.
Exactly, signed by Macron and the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk. Both very strong voices supporting Ukraine, of course.
And this treaty lands right in the middle of, well, everything happening with the Russia-Ukraine war.
Right. The core of it is this mutual assistance pledge. And crucially, it includes military means if either one faces armed aggression.
So our mission today really is to unpack what this bilateral deal means for European security, in the current climate.
And for those of you tracking international relations, especially our UPSC aspirants, this is a really key development. It shows how security structures are evolving, and it's definitely relevant when you think about India's own partnerships.
Okay, so let's dive straight into that central piece, the Mutual Defense Clause. The language is, well, it's pretty direct. In the event of armed aggression on their territories, the parties shall provide mutual assistance, including by military means.
And Macron was quite clear, wasn't he, that this isn't meant to replace NATO or EU security.
No, exactly. He framed it as strengthening those existing setups, bolstering them.
Which raises the question then, what extra layer does this specific, bilateral promise actually add beyond those bigger alliances?
That's the key question, I think. And it gets more interesting because Macron didn't just leave it there.
You mean the talk about troop deployments?
Yeah, he hinted at the possibility of rapid troop deployment if there's aggression.
Which suggests maybe a speed or directness of response that, well, you might not always get automatically within NATO, perhaps.
Precisely. It sends a signal, doesn't it? Not just to Russia, but maybe to other allies, too, about commitment.
It definitely adds a layer of, explicit person-to-person. Well, nation-to-nation. Guarantee.
And then there's the nuclear dimension. Macron's comments afterwards, they were intriguing.
Talking about France's nuclear arsenal.
Well, he spoke about integrating the interests of key partners when France defines its own vital interests.
Okay. So the implication being,
could this hint at sort of an extension of France's nuclear umbrella, even informally, to Poland through this treaty?
Wow, that's a big thought, especially for Poland.
Absolutely. Given their border with Kaliningrad, the Russian exclave, and their, well, obvious concerns about Russia.
So even an implied assurance like that, it must factor heavily into Warsaw's thinking, right?
It has to. But, and this is important, especially maybe for the UPSC analysis, an implied commitment isn't a formal guarantee.
Right. There's ambiguity there. Depends on French political will at the time.
Exactly. It shows the complexity of, extended deterrence. It's not clear-cut.
And this all happened against a backdrop of pretty strong words about Russia.
Yes, both Macron and Tusk condemned Putin's comments, particularly around that Moscow military parade.
Macron basically said Putin is on the side of war, not peace, even with talk of ceasefires.
It underscores that united front, France and Poland together on the Russia issue.
The location they chose for the signing, Nancy, that wasn't random, was it?
No, not at all. It has deep historical ties to Poland through the former Polish king Stanislaw I.
Place Stanislaus, right? A beautiful symbol of that connection.
It really is. It's using history to underline the present-day solidarity. A powerful symbolic touch.
And the timing. Signing this while Putin was holding his Red Square parade.
Right. A parade attended by people like Xi Jinping and notably the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico.
Ah, and Tusk made that comment, didn't he?
Yeah.
About attending such a parade bringing shame.
He did. He didn't name Fico initially, but it was pretty clear who he meant. It really sharpens the political message they were sending.
It highlights the different paths being taken within Europe itself, doesn't it? Seeing those leaders in Moscow versus this signing in Nancy.
Absolutely. So stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, this treaty looks like a deliberate move.
To cement the bond between two EU heavyweights.
Yes. Specifically in reaction to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the threat they perceive.
It also fits with that narrative we've heard, about Europe needing to step up for its own security. Trump's comments, for instance.
Precisely. This could be seen as a very concrete step in that direction. Europe taking more responsibility from within.
And we've definitely seen Paris and Warsaw getting closer since Tusk became prime minister again.
Yeah, the relationship seems much tighter now, which, could reshape dynamics within the EU itself. How does this Franco-Polish link influence things?
That's a good question. And then there's the military aspect itself. Poland's ambitions.
Oh, right. The talk about Poland potentially having the EU's biggest army soon.
Yeah, the numbers are already quite something. Around 215,000 troops now. aiming for 300,000 by 2035.
which already puts them slightly ahead of France and Germany in current active personnel, I believe.
So what does that mean? A militarily stronger Poland.
Yeah.
How does that change the balance within the EU, within NATO?
Well, for UPSC listeners, that's a key point to analyze. It could mean Poland playing a much more assertive role in European security, more burden sharing within NATO, potentially.
And it connects to the wider region, too. Zelensky announcing that meeting in Ukraine shortly after.
Yeah, with the coalition of the willing leaders, it just shows how active and, frankly, how tense the security situation is in Eastern Europe right now.
Plus, we can't forget the domestic angle in Poland. They have presidential elections coming up very soon, May 18th.
And there are warnings about potential Russian interference disinformation campaigns.
Aimed at influencing the race. There's a nationalist candidate challenging Warsaw's pro-European mayor, who Tusk supports.
Right. So the outcome of that election could, theoretically, impact Poland's commitment to this treaty and its broader security path. Something to watch.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway here?
I think it's that this France-Poland treaty shows a real deepening of security cooperation in Europe. It's a direct response to Russia.
And it's an extra layer, complementing NATO and the EU, not replacing them.
Exactly. It highlights this trend, maybe, of some European countries wanting to take more direct bilateral responsibility for security.
Which makes you wonder, could this set a precedent? Will we see more deals like this? How does it change the strategic thinking for other countries nearby?
And for you, thinking about India's strategic partnerships, what does this tell us about the value and role of bilateral security deals in today's world? It's complex.
For our UPSC aspirants listening, this deep dive really highlights how fluid international relations are right now.
Yeah, this treaty is a perfect case study of nations adapting security strategies to new threats. Understanding the why and the what next of deals like this is crucial for analyzing the global picture.
Absolutely. So if you found this useful and you want to keep up with these kinds of shifts in global affairs, please do hit like, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment.
Yeah, let us know if you have questions or other topics you'd like us to dig into. Your feedback really does help shape these deep dives.